Okay, all right, so we are live. So good afternoon, everybody, or good morning or good evening to wherever you're watching this from. My name is Fanuel, and I'm very excited to welcome you all to a special lecture, a special SAI lecture that is a combined workshop/lecture with the SAI Fellows Program that we host here at SAI, STEM Advocacy Institute. I'm honored to have you all with us this afternoon. Just a couple of housekeeping things for the fellows. I can't believe it. We are zooming past the weeks in the program. We're getting close to our last 3 weeks here. And again, please look at the curriculum, get in touch with your mentors, ask questions. We're gonna be practicing soon your pitches. And Joanne here might join us for the pitch day. So you will, so get ready for that, okay? Otherwise, I don't have many other updates, and I would like to introduce Dr. Kamens. I think I got that right, yes. She is the executive director of Addgene, and Addgene is a nonprofit plasmid repository based here in Boston. The tagline is Addgene accelerates science by sharing useful plasmid-based research materials, viral preps, and information worldwide. Joanne received a PhD in genetics from Harvard, and where she studied signal pathways. And then she spent about 15 or so years in industry. And a quite quick side note here, personal side note, I got recently acquainted with Dr. Kamens through Mass Bio Nonprofit Challenge, where I was matched up with her. She was my coach, my mentor, and I learned so much. And that was something that a memorable experience. It led me to really articulate, think really deeply about what the SAI does and so forth. And so I knew that I needed to have her come and talk with all our fellows and residents at SAI. And so with that, she will be talking to us today about a very, very important topic, okay? The leap to leadership. And it's something that we don't really, sort of organically runs up for most of us as we're starting these initiatives. But today we're gonna talk more deeply about it, explore some of the important topics, places where we tend to falter. And so please bring your questions. For those watching on live stream, drop your questions in the chat there. I'll be reading them onto live here. And if for everybody in the chat room in the Zoom, please don't hesitate to ask questions, interrupt, object, disagree. It's all welcome. Dr. Kamens, welcome.
Thanks, Fanuel. Well, I feel a little bit like bringing coals to Newcastle because you guys are by definition leaders already in one way. So I thought a lot about what I wanted to say today, and I want to talk about leading people because right now you're leading yourselves and you're leading your projects, and you're certainly leaders in the world because entrepreneurs are leaders that have great ideas. So you've got that down. And you've sought out good advising and good help through SAI. So you've got that part down. But let's say you're wildly successful. Let's just say, I mean, when Melina and Benji and Ken founded Addgene 16 some years ago, and they bootstrapped it for a few years, they probably couldn't imagine, but maybe they could, that 15 years later they would have 100 employees and a world international business accelerating science the way that we do. But they were thoughtful about some things, and I think one of the things that startups, whether they're for-profit or nonprofit, sometimes forget to do is to think early about their company culture and what kind of leaders they want to be of the people that they work with and for. And it's really important because if you set your culture early, it will grow with you. But if you don't set your culture early, it is extremely hard to change the culture of a company. So you really need to think about your leadership style from the very beginning. How is it that you're going to lead your people? What values are you going to portray to them, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today. A little bit about management, because that's the sort of beginning of leading people, and then the jump into leadership of people to be that sort of inspiring leader that you need to be to drive the missions that are dear to all of you. So there's an enormous amount of information in this presentation. So you have to consider it an introduction to topics, because this is a topic that you can't just do this one time and then that's it, I'm trained. This is an ongoing topic and you're going to need to follow up. I have been managing people and leading to some extent for some 30 years, and I still read and study take courses, work with my mentors, make mistakes and fix them. So this is a never-ending priority if you're going to lead an organization of any size, but certainly one that is successful and grows slightly larger. So think in your head, let's just start with management. What makes a good manager? If we were in a room together, I might actually have you shout it out, and you're welcome to share in the chat if you want. But you know, the managers that you've really liked working for, whether they be mentors like academic mentors or even just someone in a job, thinking about like what made them good, you know. And so it's not always exactly the same for everyone, but there are some features of good managers that can be somewhat universal. So I do want to point out that being a good manager is not the same as not being bad. So many of you have probably unfortunately experienced some of these terrible manager types, the one that's never there, the one that doesn't really give you any feedback but makes you cupcakes, the one that makes you work on the weekend because, you know, he's working on the weekend or she's working on the weekend, and so you should too. Whatever those kind of bad managers are, that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about managing well with excellence and then taking that leap to leader. So what we're going to talk more is about what is that like, that really being a great manager. So really good managers and leaders don't actually crack the whip and make people do things by force. They motivate people, and what really managers do is they try not to demotivate them. So I like this quote that says that the primary job of the manager is not to empower, but to remove obstacles. So in general, what your bosses need to be doing and what you need to be doing as bosses and leaders is helping your people do their best work by removing the obstacles that prevent them from that. And that could be a lack of inclusion, that could be poor communication, that could be a lack of resources, that could be the wrong context. Whatever those obstacles are, a good manager removes those obstacles and lets their people do their work. And in general, you probably know this. People don't actually like to leave jobs. They like to dig in and contribute in one place. But if they have a bad boss, they will leave. People do not generally leave jobs. They leave bosses. So management excellence is an absolutely crucial aspect of any organization that's growing. If you don't pay attention to management excellence, you will have high turnover and dissatisfaction, which will mean expense to you. And dissatisfied employees do not do a very good job. I will tell you that right now. So you have to really focus on management excellence. So a good manager actually helps make people happy. I'm not one of those people that thinks that miserable people that are being whipped to death in their work that's the way to motivate people. It's really not. It really doesn't work. But the problem is that work needs to get done. So you have to figure out how to motivate them to work, because you can't always do things that make people happy. Now, I'm not talking happy every minute of the day. Like when I worked in pharma, I was not so happy to have to screen by hand 500,000 compounds in a manual assay because the robot didn't work on these primary immune cells. Like that was not fun. But the data that resulted were fun. And I was given a lot of ownership of the data and ownership of the project. And so my managers found a way to motivate me to get me through that 500,000 compound screen, which was truly miserable at the bench, but not from a data perspective, right? So how can you be a manager? That's why it's hard. You need to motivate people, and probably you don't want to be doing it with brutality. That's really not, bullying people into hard work is not going to work for you. So what really does make people happy? So you might say, oh, a lot of money, or, you know, you might say some very high ideals, but it's really not. There have been a lot of studies on this, and it's actually pretty basic what makes people happy. And I want you to remember that this slide is about 10 years old. So we've known about these things for a long time. The pandemic has forced us to look at this in a little different way in most workplaces. So the first thing is people like a flexible work schedule. They do not like to be told if you have to like beg for time off to go to the doctor, or if they have a sick child to take care of that child. They like to have flexibility that makes sense. They like to be able to, I know that, you know, we have lab work at Addgene, people have to be at work, but they like to have the flexibility where if they have to take care of something for their lives, they can do that without being embarrassed or it being a challenge, and they have to sneak around, okay? People like to have a strong sense of engagement in the work. That should be obvious. This goes at every level of an organization. People need to understand that they can contribute to improving their own function and how they fit in the bigger picture of the mission of the organization. As a leader, you must communicate that. They like to be appreciated and valued. Do not believe people that tell you that they don't like to be thanked. You actually need to make sure that if you are the kind of person who's good at giving corrective feedback or corrective input, that you also remember to say thank you. And so we're not going to go in depth into these skills in particular, but you can read whole books on how to show people that they're appreciated and valued. Especially people with science training, they like to have a high degree of freedom and diversity built into their jobs. So if someone's doing the same thing over and over for the most part with no cross training, no growth, no professional development of their own, they're eventually going to leave. There's that turnover problem again, right? It's expensive to hire people and you lose their brains and all the stuff they had with them, right? So you have to figure out ways to manage people in such a way that they're stretching, learning, and growing. And finally, they like to like the people they work with. I'm not going to get too, again, into the tactics of these, of satisfying these things. We're going to do a little bit, but I will say that I have one of my rules of management is fire the jerks. So every so often an organization has a jerk who does a fantastic job, is a major contributor. Maybe they have the best sales numbers or whatever it is, but everybody hates them. They are mean, perhaps they are misogynist, perhaps they are racist, perhaps they are just plain unpleasant. But whatever it is, if you lose your credibility as a leader, if you do not get those people to move on, if they cannot work in some sort of civility with their colleagues. And because what happens is that one person may be valuable, but they bring everybody else down. And I have seen this happen time and time again. And when I hesitate to let that person go, it is always a mistake, always a mistake. So good managers and leaders know when someone doesn't belong on their team to move that person on. It's not the fun part of managing, but it needs to be done. So the fact is, the sweet spot of what is happy is different for everyone. And good teams, the managers know what their people need. They get to know them enough at a personal level. I don't believe in a flat structure. I think everyone needs to have a boss because everyone needs to have someone who knows what makes them happy and what they need to be satisfied in their job. So if you have 50 people reporting to one person directly, they can't really do that. This is the reason for hierarchy in management. Somewhere between 4 to 10 people is about all the direct reports you can handle because you need to know those people well to manage them well. I'm not saying that's possible all the time, but that's the ideal. So managing and leading is really about communication. And I'm going to talk very quickly about 3 topics in communication. One is seeking feedback. One is providing opportunities for development or giving feedback. And one is delegating effectively. So, you know, if you are, I get asked a lot, how do I manage up? Has anyone ever asked you that, or you've had this feeling, I want to manage up, I want to manage my manager. They're not receptive, they're not mentoring, they're not helpful, they're not communicative. And my actual belief in that is if the manager is not coming to you and saying, I would like your feedback, how can I be a better manager for you, right? That you can't manage up and you should really manage out, to be honest with you. But good managers and leaders are constantly seeking feedback because frankly, from a data perspective, how can you improve and function if you don't have the data, what needs to be improved, right? So it's incredibly valuable. When I started at Addgene, the person who had been serving as the COO actually quit. It was my first day. She gave 2 weeks notice and said she had a new job and was moving to New York. Okay. She said, but now that I'm leaving, I can actually tell you the truth about what's going on around here. I was like, okay, great. It's my first day, but go for it. And she said, you know, now that you're in charge, no one will tell you anything. And I took that as a huge challenge. Like the glove is thrown. I need data. I am going to get people to tell me stuff. So one of my primary roles in leadership is how do I get feedback, honest feedback from people? How do I make them comfortable? How do I give them anonymous ways to give feedback? How do I listen to them and show them that I hear them and that I'm mobilizing on their suggestions, right? Not every suggestion is good, but every one that I get, I think about seriously and I try to address it. For example, in one of my first weeks at Addgene, so I was raised in a family that swears a little bit, not really bad swears and not like, rude, any swears that are not polite, but kind of like, some small words that are not so good for professionals, perhaps. So someone heard me use a swear in the lunchroom, maybe in my first few months at Addgene. And, someone said, our leaders should not be swearing like that. That's not appropriate. And they told someone who told me that, hey, someone told me this, that they heard you say this in the lunchroom and they didn't think it was so appropriate. And I was like, thank you, I've never run a company before. I've never kind of been in the hot seat like this. They're absolutely right. I made a public apology and said, y'all need to help me because it's kind of ingrained in my dialogue because of how I was raised. And it's actually, my father's a rabbi, but at home we swore. I don't get it. Maybe it was like, not bad swears, but little swears, enough that it's not appropriate. So, but being public about taking that advice and demonstrating that you got the message, then it will happen again and again. And that's the only way that you're going to get the feedback you need as a leader to improve. If you push people away, I guarantee you will not be successful because you need their input. Okay, so giving feedback. I actually heard this great story from this woman, Ruth Godian. She's a coach for Olympic athletes. And she says she's never met a group of people more willing to take feedback because for them, they're such at the top of their game that every piece of advice they get could improve their time by 5 seconds, 2 seconds, whatever it is, it's incredibly valuable. So they see any feedback, suggestion, or advice as like an opportunity. So I almost want to replace the word feedback in my mind with opportunity. It's an opportunity to do better, to make change, to improve, to be more successful. So I have to tell you, I just did something this year at Addgene that I've been moving towards, but was super excited about, which is we did away with annual performance review because annual performance review is generally completely ineffective. It's anxiety provoking, and it is generally also a real issue for diversity. People tend to bring a lot of bias to the annual review process. It's generally a big, huge waste of time. I am so excited to have canceled performance review, as was my entire company. Joyous, in fact, gleeful. What we have is a system of constant working together on improvement, constant improvement, continuous feedback. Having managers in their reports meeting regularly with a lot of guidelines and a lot of training to have conversation that is ongoing. Because that way, if something needs to be improved or changed or learned, you can have it happen gradually over time. You learn something once a year, you're never going to make an improvement in that skill or that. You can't do it, right? You get no feedback. It's, oh, next year we're going to talk. Also, there's so many reasons why it's bad, and I don't even have time to go into it. Anyone wants to follow up with me more about this, I should write articles about it because it's really like the case. It's a problem. So really have to have this continuous feedback culture. And if you start in the beginning, teaching your managers and your people and yourself doing this kind of thing, getting used to giving opportunities for improvement, not even calling it feedback, blah, 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 like it's not negative, it's positive. It's an opportunity for growth. And once you do it a lot, it gets more comfortable. So if this is uncomfortable it is something you should start practicing now and really get better. It is a skill that you will value for your entire career. I cannot emphasize this enough. Being able to talk to people, and there's tons of books, again, introduction to this topic, how to give it well, how to give it so people hear it. It's a great thing to work on and learn. So also, I would guess that many of you, given the stage of your careers and the kind of work that you do, it's important to you that your organizations are inclusive. And many of you are working on projects that directly involve inclusion in science, as far as I understand it, I believe. Wow, this is a thing that I'm happy to talk to anyone one-on-one more about how to do this, but this is a thing that has to start extremely early in your culture. If you wait to be inclusive until you're bigger, you've missed the train. It has to start early, and the earlier you start, the better it'll be infused in your culture. So one of the things with review is that annual review, there's a ton of data that shows that we bring bias, and it prevents promotion and advancement and success of people from under-recognized groups across the board. Another reason to do away with annual review and to think about relationships and ongoing communication as the tool that you want to use for helping people grow, develop, and be successful. So again, so that's the sort of giving feedback. I used to give a whole talk on like how to give feedback in this part, and I've just done away with it. So I'm more talking now about think about how you can do continuous feedback, and then the skills for actually having good feedback conversations. Those you can read in books and articles. That is the thing that you can work on. So the last thing type of communication that's really important is delegating. So you guys are all starters, doers, shakers. And I always bring to mind that 2-year-old statement, I do it myself. I do it myself. It's hard. I go do it myself. And I want to give you all permission to occasionally just do it yourselves. But once you have people working with you, volunteers or employees, the measure of your success is their success. And being able to delegate effectively, which is really a communication topic. If you don't communicate the task well, it will not be done the way that you want it to be done. Okay, so if you don't put in place good practices of delegation, you will not amplify your work. You will be doing everyone's work and you will limit the success and the power that you have. So learning how to delegate effectively is another skill that is really important to develop in a management leadership type position. Okay, so I was talking mostly about management now. That's what I've been kind of focused on here. You know, but let's just say you want to take that management to the next level. So you can manage people and get work out of them and be a good manager and give them good opportunities for growth and do all those things. But if you really want to grow talent, you need to take it to the next level and really be a mentor. And that's a little harder because you have to kind of, you want to get that work done, but it does mean you need to sort of step away and delegate and empower the people that work for you to make decisions, own their projects. Instead of answering all their questions, maybe you want to ask them questions because that is the number one mentoring skill. It's not giving information, it's asking good questions. Good mentors ask the questions that are deep and make you question and make you think about the answers. That's how we best learn. So if you can take it to that next level, you will be like an Uber manager on the verge of excellent leadership as you ask people questions. I tend to want to give answers, drives my family crazy, drives my employees crazy. This is something I have to work at all the time to ask questions before I give answers. So if you are a good listener and an introvert, this is your number one strength. So I do not believe that introverts cannot be good managers. In fact, they are excellent managers and mentors because they do this well. So own this, because if you are asking good questions and you're a good listener, you're going to succeed at this entire part of management and leadership. Okay, so taking that leap to leader again, from just managing people and getting stuff done, taking it to the big picture. Now again, you guys are partially already as founders and as inspirational entrepreneurs, you're already taking that leap. So one view of managing to leading is that managers figure out the how things get done. And leaders have to communicate and really understand the why things get done. So that's one perspective. Another perspective is that managers lead from the mind. This is what needs to get done. I have lists, I have things to do, I have accomplishments, I have metrics. But leaders have to bring in the heart, how to make, especially in a nonprofit. But actually what's been shown is that employees at for-profit or nonprofit organizations need to have a sense of purpose. And as a leader, you need to communicate that purpose to them and they will be more motivated and more happy and all those other things we already talked about, more driven to work, right? So, you have to find time for that pep talk, for that inspirational. You have to believe it yourself, because if you've internalized the mission or and again, nonprofit or for-profit, if you've internalized whatever that goal is, that vision, you're going to have to communicate that to others, right? So, that's another view. So I have actually my own personal view on this. And I think it kind of incorporates those other things. So when people say to me, who are the leaders, at your organization? Is it the most senior people? And I say, no, we have leaders at our organization from brand new employees who just got out of school all the way up to senior management. And it's across the spectrum. Who are the leaders to me? And when I'm interviewing people and I'm looking for a leader, what am I looking for? I'm sort of looking for initiative. That's my definition of a leader. A manager gets stuff done, but taking it to the next level is someone who says, I see a problem. I'm not going to complain about it. I'm going to fix it. Those are the people that have leadership potential, and you can find them anywhere. And if you recognize them in your organizations and in your social circles as well, and people that might volunteer with your organizations or work with you or serve as mentors, those people with initiative are the ones that are going to take things to the next level. You all, I assume, have initiative because you're doing this very hard thing. But recognizing it in others is a really important skill for leaders to continue their influence, I would say. You want to have more than one leader in an organization, not just you. Okay, so I guess if you look at a manager perspective of my career, this is like how many people I've managed over time. But you can see that, sometimes I managed no people, and I would say this was a position where I had the most leadership. So managing and leadership are not necessarily the same thing. At one point when I was in biotech, our work turned to the chemical, and I'm a biologist. And so I had been running the research team, and I moved into the business development group. So I didn't have anybody reporting to me, but I was doing a lot of very high level leadership type work. So management and leadership, not exactly the same thing, right? So if you think about this from a leader perspective, these are the kinds of things where I was showing my initiative. I wasn't just managing people, but I was starting things, fixing problems, creating new projects, looking at strategic, just doing some things that required from an HR and from that culture perspective. Certainly at Addgene, most of my job is about the culture. And making sure that providing a culture that our people will be successful. So you can look at your career in two ways and be proud about both those types of things, the management stuff and the leadership stuff. Okay, so moving to leader and leading an organization and having people follow you. This is absolutely my favorite book on this subject. I strongly recommend that you read it. It's called What Got You Here Won't Get You There. So think in your head, excellent high school students, GPA 4.0, lots of AP tests, super successful, went to Harvard, everything great, went to University of Pennsylvania, summa cum laude, you're great at everything. And then all of a sudden you're running an organization and the skills that you use to do all that great stuff are no longer the skills that you need. And this book talks to you about making that transition for that stuff that worked for you before into the stuff you're going to need to lead. And it's not the same, and it's super interesting. And this is a very quick read, by the way, and it's quite famous. Now, none of these books are perfect, by the way. I don't ask you to take the whole package, but you will find pieces of this book that speak to you. So the more senior you become, or the more that you need to lead, your constraint actually becomes your behavior, because people are watching you. They're watching you. And the way that you behave for them, by the way, smart people, do as I say, not as I do, does not work. Okay. So like, I don't know, I had little kids, we wanted them to exercise. We said, you guys need to exercise every day. And my bright kids said, you guys don't exercise every day, right? So we had to exercise every day, and we did, because people just don't work that way. You must lead by example, right? So you can't be sitting there saying, it's me, it's all you, it's not you. Everything as a leader, if you want to get respect and be people to follow you, it's really about you, not about them. And so that's what this book is really about. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but it goes through about 20 different things that you could be doing that are sabotaging your leadership potential. And really going through these and kind of calling yourself out. What are the things that I do that are going to be destructive to my ability to lead a positive organization? Maybe you're doing only 2 or 3 of them that you could work on. You can't work on all 20 of these at once, but maybe you can pick one, right? So for me, not listening. I'm a terrible listener. I always want to act. I always want to give the answers. That is the one I always struggle with. I'm really good at some other ones. I'm great at giving proper recognition. I'm extremely calm when things are tense. I apologize all the time because I make a lot of mistakes. But listening, that's the one that I always have to work on. So you will find things in this list, and it is long, of things that you could say, wow, I'm doing that. How can I work on changing that? Because that's not what I want to model for my people. I want to be different. I don't want to model that behavior. So my recommendation is to get a copy of that book and or from the library, and really read it and think about, be self-reflective and work with your mentors and say, hey, I think I do this. Do I do this? That's a fantastic exercise with mentors, by the way, to work with them on the aspects of yourself that you would like to see be portrayed differently to the rest of the world and the people that you're trying to lead and inspire with your mission and your goals. So I guess I can't say it enough. If you're a leader, one of the first things you have to do is know yourself. And it's worth taking some time to really think about that. Where are my strengths? And don't forget about your strengths, by the way, because you all have them. Capitalize on your strengths. So that book is about the things you could be doing wrong, but I want you to go through that list and say, no, I am super good at this one. How can I use that thing that I am strong at? Because definitely leaders want to capitalize on their strengths as much as they want to work on the things that could use some more correction. So talking another aspect to leadership that's really important when you're looking for leaders within your organizations. And again, you guys may already be on this train with me, but don't be fooled by the packaging of the leaders that you are looking at. If I said, think of a leader, would you think of a white man? Because most people in the world think of a tall white man when you think of a leader. But we know leaders come in all shapes and sizes, of all ages. I just tweeted this week. Somebody said to me, could you explain this to me kind of simply, like so my grandma would understand? And I was like, well, I am a grandma now, by the way, myself. And that is like incredibly ageist and sexist. Golda Meir, nobody said to Golda Meir, we need to explain things to you because you're a grandma now, you know? Like, so you have to be really careful with your bias. That's a whole nother workshop that I do, but you must be working on your bias because that's going to bring that inclusion to your organization. The thing about bias is if you don't work on it, you will not pick the right people because you will miss the best people. So what I hear from people is, but I need to hire the best candidate. I can't be worried about what they look like or who they are. I'm like, yes, but you're going to miss them if your biases are at play, because all of our biases tend to think, unfortunately, pretty much everywhere in the world, which is frightening, that tall white males are the right people to do everything. And that's except for like be nurses and school teachers. Those are the exceptions. So it's kind of weird that we're that way, but we are. So, you know, that's why we really need to work on this, because we have to be aware of those biases and self-reflective about it. Okay, so how do you need to lead? These are sort of my parting words. To me, I think when I think about leading, my main goal is to promote others. It is not my job to do all the work, to take all the glory, although I am quite visible at my company. That's part of my role, being visible. But when it comes to the work that we do, I am trying to strengthen my people. I want them to have the tools they need and the skills they need and the confidence they need. It is my job to lift them up. That is the most rewarding work. That is what mentors do. That is that highest level of leadership, is bringing other people with you, not feeling threatened by talent that is with you, but bringing it up and being delighted in it. I already talked about this a little bit. You have to lead by example. If you want to trust, if you have to be trustworthy if you want employees to trust you, and you have to trust them. I have to say, we have been having a lot of meetings about coming back to work later I'm sorry, we're all working extremely hard, coming back to the office. Because at Addgene, the lab staff has been working in an incredible dedicated fashion for almost 400 days, you know, under pandemic conditions, masked and distanced. It's incredible. And then we have about 70 people who are working from home, and we want them to come back to the office, because I will tell you that fully remote is not working for us at 100%. So, you know what? We're sitting in this committee meeting, and one of the people says, you know what? I think the Addgenes are going to make good choices about this. I don't think we need to make a rule like you need to be in the office this many days a week or this much time. I think we should trust them, because we all know that fully remote is not working. I think we should trust them. And I was like, holy yes. I don't want to make a rule because I don't know what the rule should be. If I made a rule now, it would be ridiculous, right? So let's trust them. And that's what we did. And so far, I have full confidence that they're going to make good choices about when to be in the office and how to transition back to being safely together, working together. So, you know, these are things that you have to live and breathe and demonstrate all the time. And with full transparency, or people won't believe anything that you say. You lose their trust very quickly, very quickly. And I think you have to lead with humanity. And again, I'm probably speaking to a lot of people who already know this because of the types of projects that you guys are working on. But, you know, people are individual. I want to remind you, this is like a 10-year-old slide. So hello, pandemic. Suddenly we remember that people are humans and they have families and pets and babies and lives and weaknesses and strengths and priorities that are different perhaps from our own. We have to treat people as individuals. They are your most expensive resource in almost every organization, and they are your most valuable resource. So if you're not treating in a people-centric way, you know, you're not going to keep people, you're going to have turnover, you're going to lose that brain trust of people that have been with your organizations. And they're not going to maximize their efficiency. I would say one of the beautiful things about Addgene is the level of diversity gives everybody a chance to be included and to feel included, and it makes them so much more powerful as a team. And it's really, it makes a difference. It makes a difference on what you can accomplish. So, You don't actually become a leader. You can do all these things I said, but Susan Wyndham Bannister once said to me, it's other people that make you a leader. So if you're treating them in a way that you are inspiring to them, they will elevate you to that. You can't say, I'm a leader now. You can say I'm a manager. You can say I run a company. You can say I'm a CEO. But being a leader is something that other people bestow on you because you have earned it. You have earned it by elevating them. And that is something that is worth earning, I think. So I want to point everyone that we have a Management 101 blog post on the Addgene blog, blog.addgene.org, and a science career guide, which you might find helpful. But if the management pieces that I talked about today, I go into more depth, and there's a lot of references if this work interests you. So blog.addgene.org, you can look for my posts or any of the other career posts nose around. We have science stuff there too, if that's interesting, but the career stuff and the is also very helpful on the Addgene blog. We also have, just so you know, like I talked about Addgene being a large organization, you know, you may be starting small, but someday if you are successful, you could have to run all of this. And PhD scientists actually do all of these roles at Addgene, which is really kind of interesting. And it's super fun. So I actually really enjoy being with so many scientists because these are my people. I'm pretty geeky. I don't know about you, but so being in science related nonprofits or organizations that have grown is super fun. So, you know, these are, and I think it's very clear to you from looking at this that I cannot do all of these jobs. There's no way. I'm not good at all of these things. So the only way that I can lead is by bringing out the strengths of all the people that I've hired to do all these very, very different and diverse roles at the organization. So these are the Addgenes that I love to lead and that really give me joy because of their success and their inspiration to me. I'm happy to take any questions or go more in depth on anything that we talked about. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to a group of natural leaders, I would say.
Yay. Wonderful. Joanne, thank you so much for those insights. And there's so much to dissect from this. And as you mentioned, a lot of our fellows are thinking ahead, right? It's the beginning of that. So the floor is open, everybody. You guys are about to get going into this framework, right? So this is a chance to pick your brain of someone.
Is anybody hiring yet or working with volunteers? Working with volunteers, perhaps? That's the highest form of leadership because you have to influence without authority. And I have a whole, if you want me, I have a workshop on managing volunteers. If you're interested, get in touch with me and I'll share the slides with you. That's a whole nother form of leadership because you don't even get paid. So wow, that's really rough.
I have one question.
Sure.
I've straddled the like entrepreneurial world and academia for a long time, and it's like almost a trope that academics have this mindset of like, I can figure anything out, and so they at least I've seen that a lot of people are pretty poor at delegating. But I wonder if you could comment on other stuff where you think maybe the academic training is maybe not what's needed in a startup culture or an organizational kind of framing.
Yeah, I mean, I try never to take a group bias. So I'm not going to be biased against academics and say they stink at management or at any aspect of the entrepreneurial process. Thanks. That's a good question, Kate. I'm going to say individuals are better and worse and I have met academics who are quite good at entrepreneurship skills. So I would say that the academics that are nascent in their careers and have not really jumped fully into the, say, non-academic world, a couple things I think that they miss. One of them, I think, is they do think they can do everything themselves, and that's a problem. And because you can't, obviously, and so disrespecting other skill sets is, I have seen that. It is not wise for any leader to disrespect other skill sets. That would be foolish. But it is something that I have seen. I have seen and this is actually something I'm interested in kind of digging deeper on. I have seen an incredible disregard for culture and people at startups that come through academia. like until there's like 20 employees, there's no thought given to managing any of the stuff we talked about, any of this culture piece, right? I think that is an enormous lost opportunity. And I think many companies perhaps do worse than they could if they paid more attention to the people piece and the culture piece and the good management piece. So I think those are the two things I've seen from academia, is not paying attention to the sort of, oh, management training, who cares about that? I can do that, you know, like, and I know, and it's a skill. Like management people is a skill. It's not a natural inborn talent. You're not born with it, you know. So I think those are the two things I've seen and I agree with you, it can be a problem. I do not think that those people will be quite as successful. And of course, there's an incredible disregard. I'm sure, I don't know, I only see women on my screen in Funwell. I don't know how many, let's see, there's some guys, great, excellent. So a lot of the startups, I don't know if you saw the study from MIT that Nancy Hopkins was involved in and Susan Hoxfield, about how women don't do startups, and that how many were losing because they're not encouraged to do that. So I would say, you know, academics that don't pay attention to issues of inclusion are missing out on great talent in their labs, in their spheres in general. This goes for also people of color, of course, any underrepresented groups. And I'm sure, I mean, given our current focus, unfortunately, on discrimination against Asians, you'll see that Asians in science, yeah, there's a lot of Asians in science, but a lot of them don't rise into leadership positions. They're sort of, you know, there's a problem with seeing them as potential leaders. So we have a bias there as well in science. So there's a lot of lost, I mean, there's a ton of talented people and there's a lot lost talent. So I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question, but I definitely think this is something that, you know, could be worked on by, you know, a lot more people, and a better focus would have a lot more talent in the mix, because there's a ton of talent out there. Come on, you guys are a great school, right? You see the talent. It's not realized some of the time.
Joanne, is it okay if we disable the share so we can
sure,
see
sorry, yeah,
all the
force of habit.
faces?
Yeah, sorry about that. Hold on. Hang on. Yeah, let me just do this.
So while you're doing that, the question I had is, they're all super early stage, right? And then thinking back to my own starting SAI,
yeah,
the question I often get is, how did you get those initial people on board? You have no money, you pretty much have nothing else, right?
Yeah.
They're volunteers. How do you articulate and teach them?
So that is why you guys have to be leaders kind of from the get-go. You have to articulate your mission and your value, and your pitch is absolutely crucial. You can ask Fanuel how I hit him on the pitch. I was brutal, right? But I think it got better probably, right? So I think one problem that organizations have early is they're not like eagle eye on they get dispersed. They want to do all the things, you know, they want to be doing all the things. And that's very hard to communicate all the things, you know. So you really have to really be clearly articulate how your strategy meets the need, and very clear, so that the person goes away being able to give you a one, you know, like if you want me to pitch for Addgene, I can do it anytime, anywhere. I can do it in 10 seconds. I can do it in 60 seconds. I can do it in 3 minutes. I can pitch for, you know, Addgene to any audience and find something within probably 5 minutes that they're excited about Addgene, right? You need to be able to do that. And so that's going to get people on board, that passion that you have, and then finding that a hook, you know, so everybody has a different hook. And this is part of my volunteer workshop. Not everybody is going to be fascinated by your mission in the same way, or by your goals in the same way. You have to find the hook that gets them, right? So for some people are excited that Addgene is very international. We ship to 105 countries. Our last country was Madagascar, you know, and before that it was a kind of another cool one, you know. So we really love being international. That is a real hook for some people. For some people, it's open science. For some people, it's reproducible science. For some people, it's the educational resources that we provide, right? You know, so you have to know be able to pitch so that you're hooking in the volunteers. And so, and it is up to you to treat them well, because volunteers, especially, if you don't treat them well, give them a sense of the mission and bring that purpose out in them, they're not going to stick with you, right? They're not going to be reliable. And so that's the managing without authority piece. Okay, Jackie has a long comment. I wonder if early science education about the history of science and scientists is perpetuating this, since we need to highlight the scientists and their achievement. Oh yeah, rather than the group accomplishment of a team. Yeah, that whole myth of the lone scientist making a discovery is really a problem, Jackie. I agree. I love the way Fauci's been talking about all the scientists, that have, this is like all of a sudden we have RNA therapeutics just happened this year. How cool is that? Like, I was working on RNA 20 years ago, like if we didn't have stable RNA, we would not have, like, this is not a Johnny come lately project. This was poised to succeed, but it's not a Johnny come lately project. If I don't know, is that a biased term, Johnny come lately? I don't know. I probably have to stop using that. Like, it's not like something that just suddenly happened this year, right? And so we do need to really see that. And Fauci's been talking about that, actually, that breadth of research that's brought us to this point. So many contributors. And so that's a plus, I think. We're getting a little better at that. But certainly the rest of the world, we are a big black box to them, that. So that's part of the pitch. So how do people think when people ask me that are not scientists what Addgene does? Where do I have to start? Like, what's a plasmid? I don't know if you guys all know what a plasmid is, but what's a plasmid, right? I got to start I got to start really early. Like, okay, so how do I pitch that? Well, chromosomes are long and complicated. Do you know what a chromosome is? And the person says, yeah, I know what a chromosome is. They're long, they're complicated. They're small, but they're very long, actually. And if you want to study one gene, so let's say you're diabetic and you want to study insulin, everybody knows about that, right? So that's an easy one. They want that one gene. They don't want all the other genes on the chromosome because it's too complicated. So what we do is we have a toolbox of little pieces of DNA to study that one gene, right? So in 60 seconds, I've just made it clear to pretty much anybody that we have a toolbox of tools so people can study a single gene. That's pretty clear to most people, right? You have to be able to that quickly articulate your value, right? And so I think that is part of being a leader, is being really confident in communicating your value in a simple way, so that volunteers feel the need to solve the problem that you want to solve.
And you'd be glad to know, Joanne, I've been taking that spirit, that energy you shared with me, with everyone else, asking the hard questions.
Ask the hard questions.
And I hope you're all seeing the value of being able to pitch questions, comments.
Yeah. Never feel bad if someone pushes or criticizes your pitch. It's just going to get better. That is an opportunity. That is an opportunity. So, other questions? Someone said creation of policies. Yes, absolutely. I mean, institutional policies to improve diversity, that's a huge part of diversity practice, is having the correct procedures and policies in place. But as leaders, policies, there's only one part of it. It's the messaging and the image that you portray that's really going to make an inclusive workplace. So yeah, I'm happy to, if people are very interested in that, we can talk offline about strategies for making a true, striving for inclusion. It's important.
If no one has a question, another mix. So as leaders, you're not going to know everything. And as many of these fellows here are starting out, they're noticing there's many components, right? We have a lecture on fundraising and finance very, very soon that I'll be giving.
Yep.
You're not going to know everything. So how do you navigate that, especially earlier on?
Yeah, that's the fun part, you guys. Because if if most of you are scientists by training, the learning new stuff is the fun part. So, stretching your skills. To me, as long as I'm learning, it doesn't really matter what I'm learning, I'm happy. So like when I went to my biotech and they're like, hey, do you know how to do press releases? I'm like, no, I'll figure it out. Like, do you know how to pitch to investors? No, let's figure that out too. That sounds fun. So I guess I would see all those things, but I think a lot of time the best thing to do is don't reinvent the wheel, is find other people who know that stuff and have them teach it to you, so that you're not expected to know all the things. So that's where developing a posse of mentors, and that's what SAI is great for, that think tank of all that different expertise. Do not think that you can do it yourself. Somebody probably knows more about it, unless it's like, for me, I know a lot about the LCK protein because that's what I studied in graduate school. But other than that, I had a lot of stuff to learn. So I never stop learning, and actually, I actually think that a learning culture is better for an organization anyway. So at Addgene, for example, we have a lot of interns and co-ops and summer students, and we have like 7 Northeastern co-ops right now. They're teaching us stuff. They're like hot. They're so good. But for me, that part of the mentoring culture, when we have those trainees, those early career trainees, people teach them all the time. And so that everybody benefits from that constant learning because it gives opportunities for development. People ask questions more easily instead of making assumptions and trying to do something that someone could help them with. So creating a culture, that's another aspect of culture that you might want to focus on, is that always learning culture. Right, and I'm sure SAI learns a lot from you and vice versa. So that's super important. So for me, that's the secret value of the apprenticeship system is it makes the culture better. It's like benefits us in so many ways, and that's just one of them.
Thank you for that. Any other questions, guys? Kate has a question. How do you get people to be your mentor, especially if you don't have a formal relationship with them?
Right. So I have a whole body of literature on mentoring, which you're welcome to stalk me online, or I'm happy to share my mentoring handbook and stuff with you. There's also on the Addgene blog, there's a lot of stuff on mentoring. So I don't believe, well, you guys have a formal mentoring program because you're mentoring for some very specific skills, and that's excellent. It's more of a training program, I would say. But one-on-one matching for mentoring is a bit iffy. Sort of like dating. I don't know if you've ever been set up on a blind date, but the success rate is really small, actually. You hear these miracle stories and even dating apps, swiping left or right. And I don't mean I mean actual dating apps, not like just hookup apps. You know, like that's not that successful that often, okay? So the mentors that work tend to be the people who you already know are helpful to you. So being matched with a stranger is not the thing, but having a broad network and casting a wide net. And then when you jive with someone saying, hey, by the way, don't ask someone to be your mentor because you'll freak them out. It has like a lot of gravitas. So let's just start with coffee. Would you have coffee with me? And can I just get some advice? And then, you know what, this coffee went well. Could we have coffee again in a month? Because I really learned a lot from this coffee. Okay. And then, 6 months later, you've met every month and they're your mentor and they don't know it. So that's the way I actually recommend that you get mentors. Some people will say no, but plenty of people will say yes. You also have a mentor for a minute, right? Someone who you talk to one time, they give you a useful piece of advice and you move on. That's a mentor. If they gave you one valuable piece of advice that meant something to you. Somebody who you knew 10 years ago who knows stuff, and then you call them 10 years later and say, I remember this stuff. I need it now. Could you help me? A lot of times they will. So mentoring is like this fluid thing. It's not this one sage teacher that drives your whole career, I'm a big proponent of peer mentoring. You guys are doing that. It's fabulous. You have each other. In general, I actually think your peers get you. So that peer mentors ask good questions, peers ask good questions, and that's what mentoring really is. So I think your peers make good mentors, and I'm a big proponent of peer mentoring groups, which is essentially what you guys and the whole system Fanuel has set up here, which to me is high trade-off. I mean, high success, high value. I hope that answers your question. Is there a different word to describe the fluid relationship? We need a new word. Yeah, maybe we need a new word. I've been talking about mentoring. I think a lot of people talk about the posse of mentors. You don't have one mentor, you have a posse. And that's I don't know if everybody knows what posse. Does anybody know that word anymore? Like from Westerns, it's like a group. You have a group of mentors in your life and they come in and out as you need them. Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that builds into, when you're building an advisory board, like for your organization, right?
Yeah.
How do you do that? So I see Safik say critical friends.
Yeah, critical friends. Critical friends. That's right. And don't shut them up. Let them be critical. That's actually right, Safik. That's exactly what you want to do. Get those. Those are your most valuable mentors, the critical ones.
And advisors is the other one too, because there is a difference. Advisors is sort of there. You kind of pitch them. You need them for some things. Mentors in my book are those that will go the extra mile for you when you don't need something. I'll email them and say, hey, Kate, did you check out this fellowship that came out? You should apply.
Yeah.
They're thinking about you without you even asking.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that is true. And you know, that's part of building a network. So I have a webinar on that called Networking 101 on the Addgene YouTube site, because I don't believe in like exchanging cards with strangers. It's really building deep relationships. So the deep relationships that you guys are building through SAI, the people that you are with now are your future mentors and you are theirs, you know, so that's a really good way to build those relationships.
Any other questions? So the comment about leading from behind, I thought that was so powerful, right? We typically hear leader is pulling people to some land, right?
Well, leave it to Nelson Mandela, right? Like a consummate leader who was so inspirational, but so modest and so successful. Like he's like the completely opposite of what one would expect, very self-effacing from a traditional leader, you know, like let's say Elon Musk as the direct opposite of Nelson Mandela or something like that, right? Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, you have to find joy in the success of your team. So seeing them succeed is, you know, is what needs to give you the kind of glory. And, you know, you're not quite there yet because you don't all have a staff to enjoy that, but you don't want to be taking credit for other people's work, perhaps what that means, you know, and I think that's probably obvious to most people, but sometimes we forget, I think. See, good mentors also recognize when they're not really helping their mentees. Yes, absolutely. Good mentors say, I can't really help you. This happens to me all the time. People call me and I do a lot of speaking, so I can't say yes to everybody, I have to admit. But I will have coffee frequently if someone's persistent and you know, at least just one time. And then we get on and they'll be like, how can I help you? And they'll be like, well, I don't know. And I'm like, well, I can't help you if you don't know what you need. And then they'll be like, oh, I need help with my resume. I'm like, oh, I am not a resume jockey. I kind of stink at that. I haven't written a resume in 25 years. I've been using LinkedIn. Can't really help you with that. What can I, like, why are you talking to me? Like, what can I bring you, you know? So I think that's part of the mentor-mentee. You have to both be good at it. You both have to know what you need and what's needed. And good mentors would definitely say, I'm not the right mentor for you. Let's find someone who has the talent that you're trying to learn or can ask you good questions. Do you feel that joining professional societies and attending conferences is a way to connect with critical friends? Sure, if you go to the same things over and over. So I think I recommend that you go deep in an organization, not go to a lot of things. So the way you've gone deep with SAI, like I'm the founder of the Massachusetts Association for Women in Science. That's like, I have a deep network there. Like when I go to an AWIS event, I know everybody, you know. So what you want to do is get to know people and build relationships, because surface relationships, those are not the people that are really going to be helpful to your network, because they're not going to think about you when you're not there. It's the deep relationships that are going to, like Fanuel said, they're going to contact you when they hear about an opportunity. Like, for example, I don't know if it'll turn to anything, but I found someone who's interested in donating some money for people working on projects that have to do with STEAM. You know, which I have to tell you, I really hate, but okay, I get it. I hope some of you are working on STEAM organizations. It's hot and maybe it's good. I don't know. I'm pretty geeky. STEM was enough for me, but okay, we need STEAM. And I said, hey, I know this organization, SAI. I bet if you could fund some seats for people that are starting organizations to deal with STEAM. I don't know if it'll come to anything, but you know, I don't know if I'm a mentor to Fanuel, but I thought about it right away. Like, hey, this is a match. Someone with money, someone who needs money. Maybe we could, you know, right? So, so I think it's the depth of relationships. So I think any of you, so for example, if you were to join a professional society, get on the board, join a committee, go deep, get involved. Working with people is the least creepy way to network. Networking like, hi, I'm Joanne. How are you today? That's creepy. But hey, we're on a committee together. We have to do a project. We're going to have to talk on the phone once a week for the next 3 months. We're going to know each other pretty deeply by this time this thing is over. And hopefully it'll go well. We'll like each other when it's over, right? And you will see my talent and I will see your talent, and we can be referrals for each other. So that's what I'm talking about going deep, is do work with people, get active. That's the best way. How do you know when your institutional culture isn't working? Oh, well, that's pretty easy, because people will leave. that people will leave. So if your turnover is higher, so most of the people that leave Addgene go to grad school or they get promoted to a position that we couldn't have offered them because we're only 100 people. We don't have room for everyone to expand their careers. When someone just quits because they're unhappy or people just turn over. So turnover, we have about 6% turnover, which is like a third of the norm. So we know we're doing something, and we're a nonprofit, by the way, and we don't have any stock options, and our salaries are not the highest. So we work really hard to retain people. So when institutional culture isn't working, people will leave. And especially now, I have to admire you young folk, if you'll excuse me saying that. I'm 57, most of you are probably not. My kids are, they don't like a job, they just move right on. And that is the way it should be. So my son had a great job, which he loved, but they didn't treat him well during the pandemic. He had a pregnant wife at home. They didn't keep him safe. They made him travel. They didn't make his travel safe. And he left. And now he works for Peloton and he is happy as a clam because that is a company on the up and up. And they actually practice the diversity that they preach. If anyone knows Peloton, they're very into diversity and inclusion. And so he just picked up and left, and they lost a good employee who actually liked he was working at a hydroponic indoor farm, and it was pretty cool work, and he really liked it. But he's an engineer. But that's what the young folk are going to do. They're going to pick up. They're going to move. So I'm sure there's other ways to tell, Kate, but I think the first one is turnover. And in a big organization, if you see a manager who has a lot of turnover, that's like a clarion warning sign. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That manager has a problem, right? And too many organizations just let that go on. They just let their people churn through instead of saying, whoa, wait a minute, that manager has, 72% turnover. They may be the problem, So I would nowadays, I think it's pretty clear that people will leave. So.
Yeah, it's good to find those critical friends. And I love this phrase now. As I think this word is going to stick. Critical friends are
critical friends are critical.
We need some critical friends. And this idea of building these networks and connections, Joanne, we have worked really hard to always innovate. We have this thing called the Collab Exchange, whereby once or twice a quarter, we get together and it's like speed dating and you're pitching to each other, you're finding opportunities to connect. And as you said, best way to learn about somebody is to work with them.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'm also a big, as far as networking goes, I'm sort of a pay it forward kind of person. So if you can do a favor for someone else, they may not do a favor for you, but somebody will do a favor for you. It's kind of a what goes around comes around kind of thing. So when I'm networking, I'm not out there thinking like, what can people do for me? In my head, I'm thinking, what can I do for them? How can I help them? Who can I connect them to? What would be beneficial? Because eventually that comes back to you when you do that, when you think about it that way. So.
And it all feeds into the culture, and all of you, whatever you decide to do with building labs, building, nonprofits or working in industry and starting small groups, culture will be part of this, right? How you talk, how you communicate, right? The value. I think it's really important. So with that, if there are no other questions, we're at the top of the hour. This was fantastic, Joanne. Oh my goodness, we need to have you back. I know you have books and books in your mind. So
I don't know about that. I have opinions. Thank you for letting me share my opinions about all of these things.
Much appreciated. And thank you. All right, everybody, have a good week.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
Thank you.